Starting from the 9th century, the most common types of churches were the early Middle Ages central dome churches, with many modifications and innovative annexations. The floor plan was changed significantly. There were even two-story vestries as complementary structures built on the western side. The dome, entrance, windows, and other structures went through changes as well. The octagonal drums supporting the dome of the early Middle Ages churches evolved into polygonal or cylindrical forms. The width of the windows decreased such that the interior became less illuminated, imparting a mystical aura to the church. The techniques used in the artistic work for building arches, entrances, and cornices changed as well. The ornamental carvings reached a new plateau of perfection. New decorative patterns emerged which were not only used for decorating the church buildings, but the Armenian cross monument as well. During this period, large monastery complexes were built that included secular and economical buildings as well as churches. The monastery complexes were the spiritual and educational centers of the time. There were seminary schools adjacent to these monasteries. These schools taught history, astrology, philosophy, theology, miniature painting, science, art, and many other subjects. The main building material was the Armenian tuff, basalt, limestone, and others. The size of the refined stones notably decreased. The stones used for the surface decreased in thickness, accompanied by the decrease in the thickness of the walls as well. Stone roofs replaced the baked clay roofs. As a result of the building activities of the 9th century through the 11th centuries, the Armenian architecture developed and achieved new advancements. The Armenian architecture in the advanced Middle Ages retained its national character, but at the meantime developed in distinct branches or schools like the school of Syunik, Vaspurakan, Shirak, Kukark, Artsakh, and others. The Syunik School of Architecture. One of the distinctive features of the School of Syunik is the employed building technique. Due to the absence of good quality tuff, the builder masters were forced to create a technique where broken basalt and tuff were used together as a building material. Here, one encounters coarsely processed stones, and the more refined ones are used for the building of essential abutments at the corners, arches, and the dome. The chapels of the School of Syunik were first of their kind in the Armenian architecture. The monastery of Tatev in the region of Syunik, located in the village of Tatev, is a vibrant example of School of Syunik. The monastery complex of Tatev is built on mound protected by mountains and deep canyons. It was one of the spiritual and cultural centers of Armenia during the Middle Ages. The complex included the University of Tatev, with faculties of theology, philosophy, mathematics, grammar, miniature painting, music, architecture, and others. The main church of Tatev Monastery is the Church of St. Paul Peter, or Bohos Petros. It was built during the years of 895 to 906. It has a width of 16.4 meters and 27.2 meters length of rectangular shape. The main altar is located at the eastern side of the church. There are 4 square plan vestries at the 4 corners of the church, which have semicircular altars on their eastern sides. There are paired pillars supporting the dome. On the western side, the abutments of the vestries support the dome. This constitutes the major difference between the advanced and early Middle Ages churches. The Church of St. Gregory the Illuminator is located adjacent to the southeastern side of the St. Paul Peter Church. This church was first built in the 848, but it was destroyed by the Seljuk Turks. It suffered another devastating blow by the earthquake of 1138. After it was rebuilt and finally the existing church was built in 1295 on the foundations of the original church. It has a rectangular plan, 8 meters wide and 13.5 meters long. This church is a single nave structure with the main altar at the eastern side and without a dome. The second church of Tatev Monastery is called St. Asvatatim, built in 1087. It is a relatively small church with dimensions of 5.2 by 7.3 rectangular floor plan. Besides the western side, the church has a pair of triangular niches at each side. It has a semicircular altar in the eastern end and has no vestries. There is a monument called the Swinging Column at the western side of the Tatev Monastery. This 6-meter-high column made of lime cement covered with stone swings. The column ends with an ornamented cross sculpture. This monument is called the Holy Trinity. The monastery of Sevan, located on the peninsula of Sevan, also belongs to the school of Syunik. The churches of the Sevan monastery were built in 874. The small churches are called Saint Karapet and Saint Asvatatim, and the third one is called Saint Haruchun. The last one is in a half-ruined state. The two churches are reproductions of the central dome cruciform design of the early Middle Ages. Vibrant example of the school of Syunik is in the village of Zorakyur of Gerarkunik region, the church of Shorakat, found in a half-ruined state. It was built at the end of the 9th century. This church again is a reproduction of the central dome cruciform churches with 4 altars. Structurally, it is very similar to the church of Hrepsime, but it differs from the latter by its pair of triangular and semicircular niches. Some other examples of the Syunik school are the churches of Vanivan, Aluchalu, Kotavang, Vahanavan, and others. The Vaspurakan School of Architecture. After the demise of the Arab Caliphate, like the rest of Armenia, Vaspurakan developed culturally and artistically as well. The Vaspurakan architecture includes variations of central dome churches and basilicas. One also encounters unique and innovative structures belonging to this school. Like the school of Syunik, the structures of Vaspurakan school have coarsely cultivated stones, and the refined stones are used at the corners and important abutments of the buildings. Good representatives of this school are the Akhtamar St. Cross Church, Varkavank, and Narekavan buildings. The talented architect Manuel built St. Cross Church in 915 to 921 during the reign of Gagik Artsiruni. The church has a central dome cruciform plan. Delicate and exquisite bar-lifts and abundant frescoes are the distinguishing feature of this church in the Armenian and world architecture. The theme of the external bar-lifts deal with spiritual and secular life of Vaspurakan, thus presenting a good source of information about the life of Vaspurakan during the 10th century. The same could be said about the frescoes on the